Hello everyone, this is Serious Trivia, and today we're concluding our Sima Yi's Coup Let's Talk Lore series with episode 10, titled The Great Purge. Before we get started, here's the answer to our trivia question from our previous episode, and be sure to stay tuned to the end of this episode for what series are coming next. Now, we ended last time as Sima Yi took control of the capital, following his takeover of the weapons depot and the daring attack on the Imperial Palace. This allowed him to make contact with Empress Dowager Guo, who had been placed under house arrest by Cao Shuang for almost 2 years now. With the Empress Dowager on his side, Sima Yi was able to use her seal to issue a series of edicts to strip Cao Shuang and his brothers of their military titles, and at least for now, the commands of the martial guards, palace guards, and city guards were transferred to Sima Yi and other senior officials who supported the coup. But this alone does not guarantee victory, as Cao Shuang still had the emperor under his control. Furthermore, because Sima Yi only had 3,000 death guards under his command in the early phases of this coup, he failed to gain complete control of the city gates, and this allowed quite a few of Cao Shuang's allies to escape the capital to inform Cao Shuang of Sima Yi's coup. Now, the most important official that managed to flee was Huan Fan. If you remember, he was introduced in a previous episode when he first warned Cao Shuang of the need to keep one of his brothers inside the capital at all times to control the military, precisely in case something like this coup occurs. Aside from his foresight, Huan Fan was also the Minister of Agriculture and possessed the seal that could give him access to every single military grain silo throughout the Kingdom of Wei. Therefore, with Huan Fan by his side, Cao Shuang could technically use the Emperor's seal to gain control of regional armies, and then use Huan Fan's seal to gain access to endless supplies. This was exactly what Sima Yi feared, as he lamented to Jiang Ji that the one with the brains had escaped when he found out that Huan Fan had fled the capital when they finally took control of the city gates. Jiang Ji, however, told Sima Yi not to worry about it, as he believed Cao Shuang would be too scared to gamble his life in an attempted attack to retake the capital, so he would never listen to Huan Fan's suggestions. But despite Jiang Ji's confidence, Sima Yi knew the coup was far from over, as without the emperor in hand, Cao Shuang was still the heavy favorite to come out ahead at this point. So Sima Yi and Jiang Ji immediately marched the Luoyang city guards towards Gaopingling, fearing that Cao Shuang would make a run for it with the emperor. Now, at the time, Cao Shuang had already received news from the capital regarding the start of the coup, and his immediate reaction was to encamp on the south bank of the nearby Yi River. To bolster his forces, which stands at just a few hundred imperial guards, Cao Shuang would conscript troops from the nearby Tuntian farms until his force numbered in the thousands. Trees were cut down to make for fortifications, as Cao Shuang decided to wait for more news from the capital before deciding on their next steps. Eventually, Huan Fan would make his way to Cao Shuang's encampment and give him the grim news that the capital was now under Sima Yi's control, and that Sima Yi and Jiang Ji has also now blocked their return at the Luo River crossing. Soon after Huan Fan's arrival, Sima Yi's messenger would also arrive, carrying a letter from Sima Yi. In this letter, Sima Yi explained that when they were both made co-regents exactly a decade ago, the intention of the late Emperor Cao Rui was for them to help the young emperor to rule the country until he was old enough to do so himself. Yet during these last 10 years, you and your brothers have taken control of every single military post within the capital, seized power for yourselves, and isolated the emperor even from his own mother. Because of this, I, along with numerous senior officials such as Grand Commandant Jiang Ji, fear that our country is going in the wrong direction. After much discussion with Empress Dowager Guo, we believe the best course of action is to strip you and your brothers of your military post only, given that you agree to return the emperor safely back to the capital, and you get to keep all your nobility titles, and I will swear on my life, honor, and the eternal Luo River that you all will be unharmed upon your return. Upon getting this letter, Cao Shuang was immediately taken aback by the amount of leniency showed by Sima Yi. Sure, he would have to give up his control of the court and his military posts, but he gets to keep his marquis title, which by this point had over 12,000 household worth of tax income each year. Plus all the wealth he had accumulated in these last 10 years, he could still live out his days like an emperor without any worries. At this moment, two people tried to snap him out of this tempting offer. First was Huan Fan, who did not escape the capital to come all this way to Cao Shuang to see him surrender, begging him to reject the offer and flee immediately to the secondary capital of Xucheng, which is less than 200 kilometers due east of them. Even with the emperor's convoy, they can easily reach there in 2 days, and along the way, they can use the emperor's seal to order all the checkpoints and gates to stop Sima Yi from pursuing them. Then once at Xucheng, there would be a functional palace for Emperor Cao Feng to issue edicts for all regional troops from nearby provinces to come aid them and attack Sima Yi to retake the capital. On top of that, he had the Minister of the Agriculture seal with him, which gives him access to all the grain military silos in the kingdom, so they can easily form a large army themselves, arm it with weapons and armor stored inside Xucheng, and then supply it with food from any military grain silo and march on Sima Yi themselves if they wanted to. But this did not convince Cao Shuang, who was still hesitating when his own military advisor, Lu Zhi, also voiced in support of Huan Fan's plans, as he also argued that once they give up power to Sima Yi, they will lose everything. Sima Yi would make sure they couldn't even order a dog around, much less other men. But if they took the emperor to Xucheng and used his name to call on the entire kingdom, who would dare not to answer our call? There is no way Sima Yi can win this. Going back to Luoyang now is a big mistake, like bringing our heads for Sima Yi to chop off. But at the same time, there were a few others within the imperial convoy that argue in favor of surrendering to Sima Yi. They included the imperial attendant, Xu Yun, and the imperial secretary, Chen Tai, who were both not part of Cao Shuang's inner circle, nor were they allies to Sima Yi. They simply didn't want to see a civil war tear their country apart. Still undecided, Cao Shuang ordered Xun Yun and Chen Tai to act as his convoy to ride to Sima Yi's camp to negotiate the exact details of the terms. Meanwhile, seeing that Cao Shuang was still favoring surrender, Huan Fan tried to talk to Cao Shuang's brother, Cao Xi, to use his position as the general of the center to gather troops garrisoned nearby Luoyang to escort everyone here to Xucheng. But Cao Xi, who had long been unhappy about his brother Cao Shuang's actions, was also unsure how to approach the situation, as on one hand, surrendering would mean handing their fate over to Sima Yi, but perhaps that's what Cao Shuang needed, as long as Sima Yi would keep true to his words and only strip them of their military post. As Cao Shuang and Cao Xi continued to mull over their future, Xu Yun and Chen Tai returned after their meeting with Sima Yi, as they would confirm that Sima Yi swore on his life, honor, and the Luo River to uphold his promise. At the same time, they also brought back Yin Damu, who was Cao Shuang's house slave and someone that Cao Shuang trusted, as Yin Damu would also confirm to Cao Shuang that Sima Yi indeed swore to uphold his promise, and that they would be all unharmed if they just returned the emperor and give up their military commands. Grand Commandant Jiang Ji, another well-respected member of the court, also wrote to Cao Shuang and assured him the same things in writing. But even with all these assurances, Cao Shuang still needed more time to contemplate, as he and his brothers would spend the entire night by the campfire thinking over this vital decision. By the morning, Cao Shuang finally made up his mind, as he decided to take up Sima Yi's offer and surrender the emperor to him and return to Luoyang. Now, part of the calculation here must have included that aside from him and his brother, all their family members were still in Luoyang. So while he could have left for Xucheng and used the emperor to summon armies to try to retake the city, there would be a good chance that their families would all be executed. Also, given Sima Yi could also use the Emperor's Dowager to make a counterclaim to all the regional armies, and then who knows which side would end up with a stronger force, especially given how much better of a military commander Sima Yi was compared to the inexperienced Cao Shuang. So in the end, Cao Shuang chose what he felt was the safer path, which was to surrender with the assurances from Sima Yi. Huan Fan, however, strongly disagreed, as after Cao Shuang made up his mind, Huan Fan started to curse out at Cao Shuang and his brothers as he lamented that Cao Zhen was such a fearless general, yet all his sons are cowards and no better than pigs or cattle, now lining up eagerly to get slaughtered. Of course, Huan Fan was furious because he had no assurances from Sima Yi. So given how he had fled the capital to side with Cao Shuang at the beginning of the coup, the result of Cao Shuang's surrender will surely mean the death of him and his clan. So it's completely understandable why he would be acting out upon hearing Cao Shuang's final decision. And with that, Cao Shuang chose to leave his fate in Sima Yi's hand, as the imperial convoy would give themselves up to Sima Yi and return to the capital city of Luoyang together. Once back, Cao Shuang and his brothers were allowed to go back to their estates, but their freedom were stripped away as heavy guards were placed all around their estates. Guard towers were erected to fully surround the estate so the guards on top of the towers could watch every single move inside at all times. No one was allowed in or out, but Cao Shuang ended up not being too worried when he demanded for better food, and Sima Yi obliged, sending better food to their estates. In Cao Shuang's mind, if Sima Yi wanted to kill him, then he would have never listened to his demand. Yet, unbeknownst to Cao Shuang, right after their return to the capital, Sima Yi immediately arrested a head eunuch named Zhang Dang, who was Cao Shuang's main contact inside the imperial palace, and the person that Cao Shuang had actually used to control the other eunuchs to spy on the emperor at all times. Zhang Dang got his head eunuch position after bribing Cao Shuang with 11 of the former emperor's concubines, and it was also through him that Cao Shuang was able to steal so many of the imperial items for personal use. And after a few days of torture, Zhang Dang not only confessed about all of Cao Shuang's wrongdoings, he was even forced to frame Cao Shuang and his entire cohort for secretly planning a coup to usurp the throne for themselves. Now, I make this claim that Zhang Dang is framing Cao Shuang here because, in my opinion, this was something that Cao Shuang would never have told a lowly eunuch. So I believe Zhang Dang's accusations about the usurpation was entirely forced upon him by Sima Yi, who needed this crime of usurpation and treason to break his own promise, as he never intended to show any mercy to Cao Shuang and his cohorts. Indeed, with Zhang Dang as the lead witness, Cao Shuang and his close advisors would all get arrested and thrown into prison. According to one source, Sima Yi would put Cao Shuang's closest advisor, He Yan, in charge of listing out all those who were involved. Believing that he would be spared if he provided the information on all of Cao Shuang's cohort, He Yan agreed, as he ended up selling out every single one of Cao Shuang's allies. In the end, when He Yan gave Sima Yi the final list, Sima Yi told He Yan that there should be 8 main clans involved. But when He Yan checked his list, he only counted 7. Sima Yi continued to stare at He Yan, as He Yan slowly realized that Sima Yi never intended to spare him, as he asked out in disbelief that if he was the 8th clan. Sima Yi nodded in agreement, as on February 9th, 249, just 3 days after Cao Shuang's surrender, over 5,000 people, headlined by the 8 clans in Cao Shuang's clan, Ding Mi, Deng Yang, and He Yan's clan as the 3 dogs of the imperial secretariat, Li Sheng, Bi Gui, Huan Fan, and finally the eunuch Zhang Dang, along with 3 levels of their relatives or their father's clan, their mother's clan, and their son's clan, were all gathered up and executed by Sima Yi. The only person spared from all of this was He Yan's son, who was just 6 years old at the time, as his mother, Princess Jinxiang, would hide him with his uncle Cao Lin. Cao Lin was Cao Cao's 10th son and the Prince of Pei, so showing deference to the imperial clan, Sima Yi allowed this and did not push for his execution. But overall, this mass execution was not only exceedingly cruel, but also made Sima Yi lose a lot of credibility amongst the senior officials at court, as many of them firmly believed that Cao Shuang was going to be spared. Jiang Ji was so disgusted with his old friend that he refused the promotion given to him until Sima Yi forced him to take it. Now, in my opinion, Sima Yi, who was already 71 that year, knew that he was nearing the end of his life, and his reputation was about to go to the grave with him. So trading it for the complete eradication of Cao Shuang and his cohort was worth it in his mind, as it greatly reduced the possibility of revenge against his clan after his own death. Now, Sima Yi would still go on and live for 2 more years after the Galpingling incident, as he would end up dying on September 7th, 251, at the age of 73. In these 2 years, Sima Yi would further reduce the power of the imperial clan princes, following the first internal rebellion against the Sima clan. All in all, the Wei loyalists in the Huainan area will attempt 3 rebellions against the Sima clan in the period from now until Sima Yan's usurpation, and they will be collectively known as the 3 Rebellions of Huainan, which will also be the title of a future Let's Talk Lore series covering these rebellions in greater detail. As for now, our series on Sima Yi's coup is complete, as this episode and the series will now come to an end. For those who are curious about what our next Let's Talk Lore series will cover, here is the list of all the currently planned Let's Talk Lore series that will be coming to the channel in the near future. This is not a complete list, as there will be a few mini-series added in the future. But looking ahead, there is now a community poll on the channel to determine which one of these series listed here will be our next series. Hopefully you all have enjoyed this episode and series enough to consider subscribing to the channel for more content like this on Three Kingdoms history, or simply support the channel by leaving a comment below or hitting that like button, as the next series, whichever one wins the poll, will start 2 days after this episode hits 400 likes. So until then, bye!